Hey, Buru, Iboya, Ibucheche, everybody in Cyberland. Hey, it's your favorite Babaláwo. It's a hope so. Oddi, Leke, coming at you with another spiritual Sunday. Super glad that I am with you this morning. And not only because today is Super Bowl Sunday, I do love me some Super Bowl, right? The competition, the energy, right? To get after it, one team versus another for a championship. Man, that's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. So here's where I want to kind of make sure that we're level set a little bit here, right? First things first, I always like to give thanks to Olodumare, thanks to the Orishas, thanks to the ancestors, because that's the most important piece, right? Always give thanks to God first. Us humans, priests, priestesses alike, Aleyos alike, or non-initiates, it doesn't matter. Everything comes by the grace and the power of God, and that's where we're at, right? So, with that said, I see we got a couple of people on here. Freddy Buruboya, Desus, Buruboya. Oh, we got five on here. Wow, all the way down from the Netherlands, not to call you out. Buruboya. All right. So I want to go ahead and just and jump right in. All right, let's just jump right in. So, today I'm not trying to hold you all up. It's Sunday. You guys are all trying to do your thing. And but most importantly, it's good to always reflect. It's always good to kind of just take a moment of pause, right? And I really hope you take this opportunity on Sundays, even if you're listening to me, to kind of reflect after, right? Spiritual Sunday, and just kind of reflect on what was said. Right. And the things that I say, some of it does have a perspective of me, but ultimately, it is truth of Ifa. And when we say those things, a couple of things start to come into play, right? And and I want to make sure that we're anchoring what needs to be anchored, right? Because I want to speak about what happens when the warnings are ignored, right? What happens when consequences stop whispering to us, right? And you're hearing me right? Consequences that stop whispering to us. A lot of times, you have a couple options in life. When life kind of slaps you up, life kind of gives you lemons. What are you doing with that, right? Making the lemonade? Are you folding? Are you buckling and you're quitting? What are you doing? Right? So I want to talk about that. So I want to talk about a particular Odun today that's called Oyekun Ogunda. And Oyekun Ogunda is a very good Odun to kind of anchor today's session when we talk about when warnings are ignored, right? Consequences stop whispering, right? And that's something that, elders have told me in the past. Listen, you can't be mad if you were told to do something or not do something and you did it anyway. And then the consequences are so grave that there is no solution. Right? So we got to start to kind of see how that begins to maneuver itself. And yeah, we can all sit here and say Ifa has a solution for everything, but it's Ifa. Ifa dictates their solution, not me. So we're going to always lean on the side of caution and say, hey, don't do it because bad things happen, right? So, hey, Buddha boy, Bucheche, Paul, good to see you on here. Good morning to you, my friend. So, why Oyeku Ogunda? That's probably the first main question. Why? Why did you choose that Odu? And this is built, right? This is built forward, not sideways. You know what I mean? It's not built to go backwards. This is built to go forward. Because we already established several things. If you have not looked at the last spiritual Sundays, right? We had Irosunka, right? Which we kind of spoke about it, right? That self-sabotage, right? Through the speech, through the tongue, right? We got to be careful what we say and how we say it. Then we start talking base a little bit about Otrupon Irete. Otrupon Irete, that's when destiny is delayed, right? but destiny is delayed by being impatient, right? So you have to do your part. You got to kind of wait things out a little bit, see how they flow, still execute as directed, right? But you got to sometimes plan some things out, and that takes time. Then we went over Osao Trupon, right? We also went over Ogunda Osa, right? And this started to kind of go over the enforced change and the transformation. Because sometimes we are our own worst enemy. And sometimes our Ori is going to be able to assist us and the Orishas, and especially the one that accompanies us, our Orisha Batori, or guardian Orisha. And sometimes we're just not walking the path that we need to be walking, and drastic change needs to happen. So that's enforced change and transformation. So, so now that leaves us. Oyekungunda. Oyekungunda is not about ignorance, right? It is about stubborn persistence after instruction. You ever met somebody where you told them, a lot of times kids do this all the time. Hey, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, right? And yet they do it anyway. And they're still learning, right? Still trying to figure out life. We're still nurturing those children. But at a certain point, the nurturing kind of goes out the window, right? Especially when it comes to adults, when it comes to people who are already, transiting through a maturity of their Ori, their subconscious mind. They already are on that pathway to success or not, and something has to give. So according to Ifa, according to the teachings, according to what I was taught through my elders, Oyekun Ogunda governs several arenas in a particular lifestyle. One, we start to kind of talk about, the repeated warnings that are ignored, right? We just did the analogy on the children. People who know what must change, but they refuse to do it. Sometimes it's out of fear. Sometimes it's out of love. Sometimes it's out of logic. Sometimes it could be, right? Maybe it's the lack of faith that conflicts with the logic. So there's a lot of things that begin to kind of flow in this arena to include destruction, right? That could have been avoided, knowing that bad things can occur, but you avoided it anyway for one reason or another. Consequences that arrive, right? Without further notice, because the spiritual world understands the greatness that you have in front of you and refuses to let you fall. So therefore, it's going to give you a hard lesson. So Ekungunda kind of doctrinally, right, kind of covers those arenas. So this Odun teaches hard truths. And I like that word hard truths because my wife and I, we joke around a lot, and she sometimes gets a little bit flustered with certain things, and I always got to tell her, baby, relax. It's not that big of a deal. And she always mentions that word hard truths. So I kind of coined that word from her. So Ifa does not warn forever. And we understand the beautiful nature of Ifa. We got the beautiful nature of coming to a consultation. We want to call it a reading or an Ida, and it tells you a whole bunch of things. And you probably sit back, and maybe each and every one of you can relate to this. And you say, well, yeah, I know it said that, but maybe I didn't execute it. And you notice you've been getting a pass, right? And you kept getting those warnings, right? And this typically you see this a lot when it comes to new people coming into the fold of this faith. And Ifa says, hey, your temperament. Hey, you got to moderate this. Or hey, you got to be careful with this. Hey, don't do this. Hey, don't eat this. Or hey, maybe you should try doing this. There's 100 different things that Ifa can tell you, right? And maybe you don't, maybe you do some, maybe you do none, right? And then all of a sudden you get the next consultation, like, man, this is a repeated effort. Maybe Ifa's trying to pull that olive branch, I want each and every one of you just to reflect for a moment, right? Just reflect. Hey, Johnny, little boy, Bucheche, good to see you on there. Reflect. Because at some point, warnings become record. A record becomes judgment. And some people will probably be like, well, wait a minute, that's kind of harsh. And I tell you, it's no different than if a cop stopped you in the street for speeding. Hey, sir, you're going 50 in a 35. License, registration, right? Think about it like that, right? And then all of a sudden, you got your warning. Maybe that cop was like, you know what? I'm having a good day. You got your warning, right? And he gives you a little piece of paper. He recorded the warning, right? And then you get caught speeding again, 50 and a 35. And now it's time for judgment. Here's your ticket. Here's your summons. You're going to court, right? Maybe that judgment is you went so fast they took your license away. And I tell you that because from a spiritual standpoint, right? From a spiritual standpoint, again, it tells us, how much do we got to keep going down this road? People have to know, what has to change. And it's not, hey, I'm going to do it tomorrow. This is not a New Year's resolution where you said, hey, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to get pumped. No, 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 no. This is for real. This is your life. This is your destiny. And that's what Ifa is trying to ensure that we are, 100% on board and understand. So I want to kind of share with you a couple of things here, right? And one of them, right? One of them is a pataki that comes out of this odum, right? Is one thing. Then I want to also kind of explain to you a couple of other angles that I think it's important for us to review, right? So let's do this. Let's do this. I want to go over a couple of things, right? When it comes to the authorities, right? Because a lot of patakis in Oyekumugunda, right? They begin to tell us where there are failures of clear instructions that was given by Ifa. And I always like to tell people stories because I think stories really hit home. I think stories have the emotional connection for you to remember something, right? And I would tell you that, I mentioned this one story to someone before. Well, I'm gonna tell you a story of something that happened to me before, where I had a client. I had someone that came to me, someone I didn't really know, but they came to me a couple of times, and we had the consultation. And the consultation was clear. Hey, you need to kind of work on your relationship, or the relationship will fail. And hey, you have to work on the relationship, or that person's gonna seek a relationship somewhere else because they're missing that emotional bond. And the relationships are always kind of this weird thing, right? And then sure enough, when it goes sideways, you can only sit back and reflect. And then sure, you get mad because hey, someone cheated. Hey, someone's no longer with me that loved me and I love them. Hey, life got in the way. And everybody likes to use the word lifing. And I tell people I've been lifing for a long time. I'm not a young buck, right? And I've been doing this for a long time. And I say, listen, sometimes when we talk about blind faith and understanding that, hey, sometimes I need to pump the brakes and I need to truly take the written word, take the consultation for what it's worth, and let's get after it. Or I have many people at a certain point in time when I had a consultation with them and say, hey, you know, you have to be careful with your children. You have to understand where your children are going. Hey, you cannot allow undisciplined children. And more importantly, be careful on what you're doing because the curse of the parents goes on to the children. And I warn people in different scenarios about the same thing. And then when children go through something, right? Then when we reflect, and then we're heartbroken, and then we're trying to figure out through Ifa, my son, my daughter's locked up, maybe something bad occurred, and we begin to kind of reflect and we start saying the instructions were clear to you, but you felt because of Western civilization and how you nurture and how maybe you read online or somebody told you, hey, listen, this is how you discipline, but you notice it wasn't working, yet you still went down that road. And when things did not work out the way you needed them to, you came back to Ifa. But here's the thing. Now Ifa tells you there's no Ebo to prescribe. It's too late. The consequences need to play themselves out. And then people want to blame Ifa. Ifa can solve anything. There's a solution to everything, and there is. And sure, Ifa already said certain things got to play out. And sure, we can limit, the abrupt nature, of missing the advice. But each and every one of you, and if you're tuning in, you probably had a consultation or two in the past. You've heard the advice of Ifa. And some of it you followed, and maybe some of it you didn't, right? But consequences, depending on who you are, consequences, depending on who and what Odun you have in your hand of Ifa, right? Those things can be sudden. They can be rapid. I like to call Eshu the enforcer of cosmic law, right? Because cosmic law is all law. And Eshu is always watching. Eshu is always trying to ensure that, hey, we're doing the right thing. Eshu is the one that say, they told you, you did it anyway. Boom, here you go. Take this sandwich with a grain of salt. So, we have to be sure that the warnings are not delayed, they're not minimized, they're not ignored. Those are important. People return to E5 after losses. And a lot of times I tell people, maybe you don't need to necessarily return out of losses. Somebody asked me the other day, hey, should I be doing consultations every 16 days? And I told them, listen, by doctrine, it says, hey, you should consult IFA 16 days, but 16 days after you executed the embolsis. So it's not really 16 days from when you had your consultation. So now 16 days is complete. All right. Should I have another one? Well, you got to understand there's a true and a very hard truth here. Again, we're going to go with the hard truth. Every time you ask Ifa, it's constantly trying to maneuver you and put you back in alignment. And one of those biggest alignments is going to be your own personal character, which is the reason why I tell people, hey, listen, if you just got the advice, you did the Ebo, now you're following the advice through physical changes, right? Through mental changes, right? Now, Ebo plus Ifa Inu, which is another Ebo, right? Which means take care of yourself, get yourself aligned, listen to what they told you. That'll sustain you. That will sustain you. Maybe there's a consultation every month or maybe every other month. Now, every other month I subscribe to because that's the right thing, right? Because things shift so often and maybe we don't get to see a clear picture. So every other month, sure. And then people say, hey, listen, Padrino, I don't know what to do. I don't have money. I don't have this. I don't have that. Right. And I always tell people, listen, only you can dictate, you know, what's important to you. For example, you like to drink your Starbucks every day. Example, if you like to feed a need, maybe some nicotine through a cigarette, maybe you like to have nice drinks on the weekends. All those things equate to something. And when you put that together, maybe that's enough to do the things that you have to do. And I'm not saying this is about money. These are examples, right? That there's always going to be a way to get this resolved. And if you think money is your problem, but yet you can still do X, Y, and Z, which also is money, Ifa's already telling you, listen, how well are you doing with the things that you need versus the things that you want? So then we go back to Oyekun Gunda. And we start thinking, Oyekun Gunda teaches us that when the warnings are ignored long enough, Destiny stops negotiating. It's off the table, right? And we have to be able to truly look at that and say, damn, you know what I mean? This is real. This is real. Hey, little boy, Bucheche, Fred, good to see you. Good to see you. I got Fred Nurse. I got everybody on here. That's good. Eli, how are you, my friend? Little boy, Bucheche, good to see you. Good to see you. All right. Hey, so now, now I want to go over a couple of things here. I'm noticing I'm trying to look at the chat at the same time. Hey guys, you got any questions, comments, concerns? I want to make sure I hear it from you. So please put them in there. All right, now let's take a couple of minutes here to talk about something different. I want to kind of just take a, not necessarily a sidetrack, but I want to talk about some real world reflections. And then I want to go into some Q&A. And then I want to go into just ensuring that ultimately at the end of the day, I answer all the questions in the chat, give you back your Sunday. Took a lot of time from you. But now let's talk about some real world kind of issues, right? Not theory, not metaphors, but reality, right? I want you to kind of look around you. And I know this is a touchy topic, and I'm going to tell you that nonetheless, right? This is not about other religions. This is not about politics. This is not about, it's not about any of this, right? And I do have a new podcast channel on YouTube, and I just gave my first episode. I have a podcast from years ago, and I was doing the same thing where just, hey, real talk, right? This is Ifa, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I'm gonna tell you some hard truths, right? Hence the reason why I did this seminar or spiritual Sunday, was for this particular reason, right? Because I think the older I get, it's time that we really need to reflect on some things, and we really got to tell people things, and people need to hear things, and whether they like it or not is irrelevant, because the goal is that I need to try to align you, right? The idea that I need to please you is only supplementary to the primary mission, right? That's a caveat, right? What's the primary thing, right? So I want to make sure that we're tracking through this. So I say look around you because, and again, not theory, not a metaphor, but the reality, right? The institution that we have around us, an institution that we've known for years or hundreds of years, or through the beginning of time, through you went through school and you thought you had a good understanding. When you look globally, different countries, and you look globally on what's going on, and there is so much to grasp, right? There's so much to grasp, right? Institutions are collapsing, right? If you look at the actions in Venezuela, you look at the things that are happening in Iran, you look at, the things that, unfortunately are happening in Cuba. And I got a lot of people I care about in Cuba. There's a lot of people that are feeling some things, institutions that are collapsing after decades. And some of it, and some of you are going to say, oh, it's because of one side. Oh, it's because another side. Everybody's going to have an excuse. You guys can ask my son. I'm very big on saying that. Listen, it's either we did or we didn't. I don't want to hear that, oh, it's because. No, I tolerate that and I like to listen to those things, but sometimes that's not necessary because it's either you did or you didn't. I didn't do something because of X. No, no, I asked you, did you or did you not? I did. Oh, perfect. Then let's move on, right? And so when we talk about things like Iran, Cuba, we start talking about all these other things, we got to start thinking about, those countries, to a certain point, those people are suffering. And nobody's going to tell me because I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been there multiple times to Cuba, right? I know how to get around that island very well. Um, and I saw the suffering. I saw where people were just trying to make ends meet. I saw a place that was just stuck in time and never evolved. And I saw these things, right? So, sometimes things need to kind of just, hey, the government gave up. They lost their will. Why? Because they're still eating and living in their nice places and getting what they need. Sure. But the rest of your people are suffering? Nah. That was reform ignored, is what I call that. So, but we can't get wrapped up around that because we just have to do our homework, right? We can't think from here. The economy, tightening after years of kind of reckless behaviors. We saw where money was being spent everywhere, and people, like to kind of go one aisle or the other. And I'm telling you all of this because this all goes back into the Oddi. So we understand the economies, people spending for things that, maybe they want, not necessarily things that we need as a nation. We look at the climate, the instability of the climate, right? And after repeated scientific warnings, hey, take care of the earth, hey, the weather patterns, hey, the, climate change, you know, at a certain point, those warnings sometimes we ignore for one reason or another. And I'm not saying one side is right and one side is wrong. Relationships ending after long ignored issues, right? Nothing is out of nowhere. And that's the key, the hard truth. Oyekuguna explains this pattern very clearly, but I'm going to tell you something else that explains. How well are you with looking in the mirror and said, I did it. That's my fault. You know what? I'm wrong. How many times are you able to look somebody in the eyes and say, hey, listen, I screwed up. That was me. I take ownership. I apologize. How many times can you, right now, if you took out your notebook, take out a notebook, okay, take out a notebook and start writing down when I was 21, when I was 25, or I was whatever, here's what I wanted to accomplish. Here's where I'm at today. And look at the difference. Are you ignoring yourself? Your evolution. And it's not too late for a lot of things, but don't wait until it's too late. Right? Today is always the day. Today is always the day you can get after it. Right? Yobe tells us. Yobe tells us about these new beginnings. Right? Ofumeji tells us on how that rebirth can occur, right? Through those new beginnings. Obviously, things need to end in order for new things to begin. So have you wrote down what you need to do, where you want to go, how you want to go? How well are you of just going ahead and taking a moment and saying, hey, listen, this is where I'm trying to get to this year. This is where I'm trying to get to next year. Hey, and do it both spiritually and physically. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? That's the big key that a lot of people are they're lacking that foundation and that structure to move forward. Which then I bring you Woody May into the pie and I say, hey, listen, but Woody May is telling you to be a logical thinker, understand how you need to go. Or Fumei is telling you, hey, I'm going to give you a way out, the rebirth of things. And Yobe is saying, hey, new beginnings. Or Kumei is telling you, in order for things to begin, some things have to end. So Yakun Meiji is going to be that what's going to transport those things. And sometimes death is not just because somebody's life left. Death could be the end of a job, a relationship, maybe a friend, maybe a circumstance, maybe a mindset. That's the end. That's Iku as well. The death of something. But death is not always life. So we got to sometimes kind of take a moment, take a step back and say, is this something that you're doing? And if you're not taking action right now, and I'm hoping that each and every one of you are right now taking a book out and you're writing your to-do, like, okay, this is what I really want to go. This is what I want to focus on. I want to and create milestones. Put it on your calendar. Do something. That's going to be the big key. So then, for those with itas, those who have their hands of Ifa, those who are Babaláos, those who are Olorishas, right? You all have itas. Maybe you received a consecration and you have an ita. Maybe you have a consecration, but maybe it's more guidance than anything else, right? If the ita ever told you to stop a behavior immediately, right? And for some of us who are old and have multiple itas, all over the place, maybe it's time to dust those off. Stop behavior X, right? And start writing those things down. Avoid a repeated pattern. Change direction. Make a bull. Change conduct, right? Start writing those things down. People gave me a hard time because they said, hey, Babaláwo, why are you doing paperwork for people? You weren't at the ita. And I tell people there's a real truth here. When you receive your hand of ifa, when you receive an ita, what goes in that room goes. Why? Because I would tell you when we do, Igba, which is the room of ifa, and that new initiate, that new Babaláwo is now born under the authority of Olodumare, because Olofing is present there, Odung is present there, right? Anything that's said in that room becomes scripture. And that's only a piece of the puzzle, right? And then I tell people, but they also gave you the signs, right? I'm getting to my point. When you did Ocha and you got crowned, right? What was said in Igba Ocha, in the room of Ocha, right? There was orishas, there was powers being sent, there was doors being consecrated and knocked on. There was a lot of processes to establish that dimension, right? That's authority. What goes in that room and what was said in that room matters. But here's where we find ourselves nowadays. We find ourselves in this predicament where everybody has itas and nobody knows, nobody remembers. Maybe this happened 20 years ago. Maybe you're as old as me in the faith and you're like, man, you know, this happened a while ago. So then, yeah, I offer paperwork and I tell people, hey, if you have your ita, let's get after it, right? If you have your ita, if you only have one sign in your garden odisha, let's get after it. I draft them paperwork. I do what I gotta do, right? And people wonder, like, hey, but wait a minute, but why are you doing that? Because sometimes it's better to see it written. Sometimes it's better. It's 2026. People want to hear it in a voice clip. People want to see it on paper, right? And I'm willing to do those things, right? Obviously, my time is worth something. Right? My time is 100% worth something. So, because my sacrifices for the name of the community, it's always going to be my thing. But as I keep going above and beyond, I don't have enough time. So, people ask, why do you produce these papers? Well, so people don't forget, right? And that's the big thing. Because Oyekungunda and everything else is going to begin to take us there. Diaz, appreciate that. Boya. Yeah, appreciate that donation. That's going to be good. So, the danger is no longer hypothetical, right? It's no longer hypothetical. Right? Correction delayed, right, becomes correction enforced. And for those waiting for their hand to be fa, this Odung is a gift to you. It teaches you how to avoid unnecessary suffering. We have a plante coming up, and I'm super excited for this plante. Um, it's very manageable size, and I appreciate that. But more importantly, this is a moment of reflection. This is a moment of blessings. And I want to make sure that, when we do Handa files, when we listen to Handa file, it's teaching you how to avoid unnecessary suffering. So when you listen to this, when you hear this, I need you to ensure yourself that at the end of the day, you listen to that Ida. You stress the concepts of what is guidance, what is advice, what should or should I not do. That's going to be the big key going forward. So you don't need to learn the hard way because Ifa prefers that obedience before loss. Right? And again, a lot of times people don't like that word. People don't like the word obedience because they feel like they're being controlled. But no one's going to control you but you. And if you're willing to do the work, then you're going to be fine. Humility before collapse, correction before consequences. All those things begin to matter. There are three specific proverbs that come out of Oyekun Gunda that I want you guys to remember. And I'm not going to say it in Yoruba, but I'm going to tell you what it means. One who ignores warnings will listen through pain. That is, it comes out of Oyekun, right? And so then I need you guys to kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Then you go into the next one where it says, life collects debt during the time we play. I'm not saying this. This is traditional text that was written down a long time ago before all of us were even in the scene. Another proverb that comes out of here: warnings are never given without reason. I think it's clear as day. I think it's clear as day. So the charge for this week coming up, right? I just recently just gave my ile, hey, some things to reflect on for this week. I gave them another odun to kind of, reflect on. But for each and every one of you, I wanted to give you this odun because we're on a different kind of trajectory when it comes to our spiritual Sundays. I need you to ask yourself honestly, what have I been warned about more than once? I want you to dust off the itas and start looking at those things. And it's just not your itas. Because I tell people, again, I'm lukumi, baby. This means you got misas. That means you got some advice from the eguns. That means we did some things. Dust off those too. You know what I mean? Have you been more warned about things more than once? And here, let me give you the pro tip. If you understand the letter of the year, if you follow the letter of the year, your house follows the letter of the year, right? And listen to that letter of the year that your house follows. Maybe your house does the letter of the year. Are you looking at that and comparing it to your Oddu? And if you start to kind of see that there's some similarities, there's some warnings that look exactly the same, that means double time for you. You should pay attention twice, two times over. What behavior am I justifying? There's the other piece. What behavior am I justifying? And this goes back to either you did or you didn't. Either I did or I didn't. Either I completed something or I didn't. It's not about excuses. Man, nothing bothers me more than excuses. There's always an excuse, right? If you need help with something, then you need help. Don't not do something and then begin to understand that, hey, now my behavior is not justified. Now I put myself in a predicament. What behavior am I justifying? Where do I keep finding myself saying, I said I was going to stop and then I didn't stop, or hey, I'm going to do this, but I never got to it, or hey, and you start to kind of see those things. What instructions am I delaying? What instructions am I postponing? Here's something I always tell people, at least within the physical side of the house. I always tell people, listen, financial literacy is a big deal. I didn't grow up like that. I'm a project baby. You know what I mean? I'm a welfare baby. I tell people all the time. I grew up like that in the hood. You know what I mean? Newark, New Jersey, Brooklyn, New York, the Bronx. Those are my stomping grounds growing up. Learned some very hard lessons. I didn't have it like that. Hell, when I was old enough, I was like, man, I can get a credit card maxed out almost within minutes. Oh, credit card companies want their money. So I don't care. Block. That was the life we lived. We didn't care. I think I have bills in my name at the age of 10. That's just where we were. And some people are probably listening to this and like, damn, that's crazy. Ah, that's hood life. That's hood life. Right. But then I tell people, hey, what about that financial literacy? Where are we going with this? This is the changes for next week that I really want you to focus on. Do we understand the things that we need, the things that we want? Have we budgeted? Right? Are you a person that says, hey, I want to receive a local next year? I want to receive a local in the end of the year. Right? Because everybody needs to receive a local ocha, at a minimum, a local ocha. Unless for very specific reasons, you need to receive a local of E5. Iboro boy, all right? Beautiful. But here's the thing. If you save, let's say, hey, I'm gonna put away $100 here, $100 there. Maybe, every paycheck I promise myself to put 100, and you have a spiritual container, right? Then that sounds a lot more manageable, right? Hey, I'm gonna stop drinking coffee for the next year, or stop buying coffee out. That's costing me, probably $8, $5, four, $3, whatever that is, a day. And probably I'm doing it multiple times a day. So that's 6 times 32, which then begins to put me down in the range of close to $200, right? And that's just in 1 month. And if I said every month I was to put that money away, you probably have your money for a local in a year. And you didn't even need to try, right? Maybe it's something that you want to do. Maybe you want to upgrade something in your home. The same process applies. Maybe for yourself, you're like, hey, I want to invest in myself. And maybe you can sacrifice those cups of coffee, or maybe that's those cigarettes, or maybe that alcohol or something like that. Maybe you get that gym membership because you want to take care of yourself. And you stick to the routine, right? You don't just have a subscription for the sake of having it. No, but you stick to the routine. So don't postpone your greatness. Put yourself, in a good place. Set yourself up for success. No one, no one, is gonna hold your hand. No one, right? Not tomorrow, not next month, but now is your time, right, to get after it. That's how consequences are avoided. So I just want to give you guys this pro tip. Maybe I'm talking like an old man, and maybe I'm just venting, but I'm just trying to set the tone, trying to make sure, because I appreciate each and every one of you. I love that you guys tuned in. So think it's something to think about. All right, Paul writes down here. I'm gonna go look at these questions, comments, concerns. Let's see what we got on here. Let's see what we got on here. All right, boom. All righty. All righty. So Paul says the extra mile that you go for people, not only your godchildren, but just people in general, is a reflection of the Babaláwo and the person that you are. Hey, Paul, no, I appreciate that. I really do. And and my wife tells me I don't know how to take compliments because I don't like it. I don't like to kind of, just it makes me feel funny. But I appreciate it. Always appreciate it. And when I see it, I'm very grateful and I'm very humble. But I never been one to take them, but it really does mean a lot. So thank you for that. So now Fred says, real talk, exactly. Good topic. Love the podcast also. I love it that you guys love it. So hopefully you guys keep tuning in. That podcast, I'm gonna try to keep hitting it up. I'm not gonna tell you when and how, because obviously it's always hard for me to kind of set a time clock, but I'm gonna try to release them, try to get them out there. You know what I mean? And make sure that each and every one of you are able to appreciate them. Again, thanks for the donation there, D. It's always a pleasure, man. I love it. You know what I mean? You guys are big supporters of the channel. You guys have been with me for years. If you haven't and you just started, hey, go back, look at the old videos. I mean, I always reflect back and I always say, damn, that's funny where I started. I mean, there's times when I was just walking around the neighborhood and just kind of just dropping something, right? And here we are, a little bit more formalized, right? A little bit more formalized, a little bit of software streaming, right? But we find ourselves in a good place, and it's because each and every one of you, have been great supporters. You give me the energy to keep pushing forward, right? If I didn't have no subscribers, I wouldn't be doing this, right? And honestly, I would probably have a lot more time in my hands as well. So, but with that said, hey, Iburu, Iboya, Ibuche, everybody in Cyberland, enjoy your Sunday, enjoy the Super Bowl for my Puerto Ricans out there. Yes, Puerto Rican descent over here, right? Um, Good halftime show, I hope. You know what I mean? So always a pleasure. If you need anything, I'll put my emails in the chat. And with that said, Iburu, Iboya, Ibuche, everybody in Cyberland. It's your favorite Babaláwo, at least I hope so. Omodu.